Okay. And something else I just want to touch on. Because of you, Post Tribulation. Here's something I just want to touch on. In Matthew, the 24th chapter, verses 29. I'm not really sure how all this is working. My theory is, people teach it actually is the wrath of God. I don't believe that it's the wrath of God. I believe it's basically like when we're making a choice. Well, it's just like Abraham. Abraham made a choice with Isaac. With the choice, everybody's like, oh, Lord, that's telling him to sacrifice his son and this and that. Well, and what I want to say there, my personal opinion on that, side note, is Abraham knew already had faith. Read the faith chapter, Hebrews 11th chapter. But anyway, Abraham was a man of faith, and God had made Abraham a promise. And the promise was that Isaac is by whom the promise was going to be fulfilled, and that he had seeds as many as the stars in the sky. So Abraham knew this. So he knew no matter what's going to happen, that God's word had to be fulfilled. Now, just think about that. Now, that's just a little side note. Okay, now going back to where I was. See, I think it's a time of testing. That's what I think it is. You know, all through the Bible, God's people has been tested. I mean, look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, they got tested. Are you going to bow down to the false idol? No, if not, you're going to burn to death. But Jesus didn't keep them out of the fire. He walked in it. He walked through it with them. He stood there in it with them, but he didn't keep them out of it. They had to make a choice who they was going to serve. Joseph, he wasn't kept out of the time of trouble. He wasn't kept out of the well. He had to go through it, but he stood strong. He survived it. And you see that all through the Bible where, you know, God's people wasn't taken out of it. They had to come through it, you know. And each time, though, the Lord was with them. Noah wasn't taken out of the world and hid until after the flood happened. He had to go through it. God gave him a place of safety, but he had to go through it. And so, I think that it is the time of wrath, that's what the tribulation is? No, I think it's more like a time of, and I don't know, I'm hoping I don't say this wrong, but I think it's more like a time of a testing, you know. Are you going to walk through the fire with him with you? I mean, because it's you know, and why not? Why shouldn't it be a time? Because we're going to have this final say, and here it is. If you're going to take the mark of the beast, then you're going to be damned eternally. That's just simple. You're damned eternally. And if you don't, you're going to get the seal of God. The seal of God, where you're eternally with him forever. So, yeah, there is, and whether we like to admit it or not, it sounds exactly like we're going to get our final choice. This is who we're going to have to say. Like Joshua said, I think, where was it? Joshua, the 15th chapter, and he said, choose you this day who you'll serve. As for me and my house, will serve the Lord. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to be saying, we're going to be choosing who we're going to serve. It's just that simple. Okay. But no, I don't think it is it's not God's actual wrath. One of the events that takes place during the wrath of God is that the sun and the moon and the stars will all go dark. Which I got another big theory on that. I'm like, I got another big theory on that one. But anyway, it says they're all going to go dark. And it's going to be in the description of like the sixth seal, I think. Is it the sixth seal? Revelation 6th chapter. Okay, the sixth seal. Verses 12 through 17. But here's what it says. It also says it in Matthew 24:29. But anyway, that is in Revelations. This is when it's specifically called the wrath of God. And that's when he says the sun, the moon, and the stars are going dark, which Jesus also said in Matthew 24th chapter, verse 29. And this is when Jesus has given us the timing of what's going to happen. Jesus says that, let's see how it goes. Let me just read it. This is Matthew 24, verse 29 through 30. And listen how it says it carefully. Immediately after the tribulation of those days. Listen, immediately after the tribulation of those days, shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So what he's saying, y'all, is that the day of wrath is beginning occurs after the tribulation. That's when everything is going to start. That's when God gets mad, right after it, immediately after it. So I say the tribulation is actually a time when you're making a final choice who you're going to serve. You're going to be saying, this is who I'm going to serve. Like the apostles. The apostles has had to do it. I see there was a lot of people even now, today, this day and time, they choose death. They choose to serve the Lord rather than deny Him. And that's at a great expense and it's just horrible, a lot of what people have to go through, but they do it. And guess what? We're not immune. We're not immune. And yes, choose you this day who you're going to serve. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Okay, so to get back where I was, the Great Tribulation is not the wrath of God. Okay? Revelations 12, 7 through 17 describes the events of the Great Tribulation too, just like it did in Matthew, the 24th chapter. Let's see. You can read you're reading Daniel and other different places. And Daniel is a big one. And I forget exactly which chapters. It could be 7, 9, 11. I forgot which chapter it is, but we'll have to go look. It's in Revelations, but you can read it in Daniel's too. And that's where the Bible speaks of 3.5 years. And which he says that's like 1,260 days, which is 42 months, which he calls a time and times and a half of times. And that's where verse 12 says the Great Tribulation is the time of Satan's wrath. After all, we know that God's not going to persecute His own people. Satan's going to be allowed to. This is the time when we're choosing. See, and this is one reason why we are choosing, why we're going to be making this choice, because he is PO'd. And he is going to destroy, more and more and more. He knows his time's up, and he's wanting to hurt God, and he hurts God, by, hurting His babies. We are His babies, and He wants to do this, but this is when we're going to have to stand. Or we remember, He is not persecuting us. God isn't doing it. He is allowing us to, He's allowing us to go through it, a Job. He's allowing it, but He's not doing it. No, He's going to help us get through it. We're going to have that ark. But the ark, unfortunately, in my understanding, is not the pre-rapture. All right. Oh, well, it looks like I'm going to have to go to part 5.